Welcome to the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. I'm Sue Loncaric, and I'm passionate about inspiring, motivating, supporting and informing women over 50 to embrace this exciting time of life. Health and wellness in mind, body and spirit are the foundations for living well, but there is so much more to a life well lived. Each week, through conversations with my guests, I'll be presenting topics that will help us all to live well and enjoy life. So join me as we discover new ways to become women living well after 50. Are you ready to start living? What are you waiting for? Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. I'm Sue Loncaric, and it's lovely to have you join me. Are you feeling a little bit beige? You feel that life's a little bit dull, that it's not really living up to your expectations of this supposedly wonderful phase of life? Well, we all get like that sometimes, and it's easy to get into a rut. But my guest today is going to help us get rid of Be Brave and Lose the Beige. Liz Kitchens has been a market researcher for 35 years and is the founder of What Next Boomer, a website dedicated to helping boomers navigate retirement options. She also has a blog, Be Brave, Lose the Beige, which focuses on issues facing women of the baby boomer generation. She contributes to online magazine 60andMe and has been published in various online and print publications. Today we're going to be discussing Liz's book, Be Brave, Lose the Beige, and find ways that we can start living a colourful and exciting life, because life doesn't have to be dull. So let's go and join the conversation. Well, I'm delighted to have you, Liz Kitchen, as my guest on the Women Living Well After 50 podcast.
Well, I am delighted to be here, and thank you for reaching out to me, even though I'm about 10 hours earlier or later than you.
I think
in
you're
Orlando,
behind
Florida.
me. Yeah, you're behind
Florida.
me in time. Yeah. Yes. The time zones can certainly play a little bit with our minds after a while, but no, it's great to have you. Now,
well, thank you so much.
Now, I said in the introduction that you've written a book, Be Brave, Lose the Beige. So I wondered if you could, and I'm about halfway through it actually, and I'm really enjoying it. Though what I wanted to do was start with you just giving us a little bit about your background and why you thought you needed to write the book.
All right, I'd be happy to share that information. You know, one of the exercises I have in my book is to ask women, and my book is finding your, Be Brave, Lose the Beige, finding your Sass after 60. And one of the things I encourage women to do is write down their biography and leave nothing out. Because when women look behind them at all of the things they have done in their lives, it's amazing. And so that's kind of, and we get to the point where we are in our lives often via a very circuitous route. And that's quite frankly how I arrived at writing my book. I started years ago at the beginning of a second marriage. I started taking an art class, and it was ceramics. And I actually fell in love with the whole process of clay and of throwing a vessel on a wheel. And the whole process became kind of a metaphor for our lives. And, I'll get to the point in a minute, but I start with the pottery. When you're centering a piece of clay on the wheel, the first thing you have to do is center the clay. And that's kind of, a message to us about centering our own lives. And then you open the clay, and that's opening ourselves to possibilities. And then you're shaping this future vessel, and that's our capacity to shape our own lives. And I was so drawn to this message that led me to starting a program for underserved middle school age students, which are also an underserved age category over here in Florida. And bringing this same kind of message to them and the power of art and clay and creativity. And then kind of from there, that led me to writing. And so I started writing a blog called Be Brave, Lose the Beige in 2009. And I enjoyed it so much. And like you, I was lucky enough to get groupies and subscribers who were validating about some of the stories I shared. And then during the pandemic, our Jeremiah project, the ceramics program for underserved kids, had to come to a close because we couldn't be in proximity with the students. And so I thought it was a perfectly fine time to write a book. And so I started, naively, because writing a book is very hard, and your editor is makes you go back to the drawing board countless times. And so I was kind of delighted when I got to the end of that process. So that's kind of the circuitous route that took me to this book. And I feel like I'm one with many women who arrive at points in their lives through that kind of a route.
Yes. Now, we're both, I would dare say, over 60. So we're sort of, at that stage, which is a little bit different to 50. I actually love being in my 60s. I'll be 66 in this coming August. And I just feel that I'm finally getting to where I should be in life. So, but there's many women out there that still feel that they're either invisible or that they have this, as you call it, beige existence. They're not happy. They're unsettled in their life. They're not happy with their lot because they're still giving so much to others, which is what women do. We're nurturers. But, and I think there's, as you say, there's a certain expectation of how women over 60 should behave, which I think really needs to change, because we are not what our mothers were in their generation or what was expected of them. The world has opened up so much more, and women over 50 and over 60 and over 70 are not wanting to stay put. They're wanting to get more from life. So your book, Be Brave, Lose the Beige, is just all about, colouring up our life and going out there and getting it. So what I'm trying to get around to the question is, how do you break away from feeling that beige feeling? You're feeling a bit lost. You don't know what to do. Life's a bit of a rut. How do you break away from that?
Okay. If you don't mind, I might read a short paragraph from my book that
Yes.
kind of is on topic. So I'll just quickly read this. I called this an ode to beige. Meet Beige. Beige is reliable, practical, sensible, and safe. Beige doesn't put up a fuss. It is very accommodating and goes with everything. Beige is conflict averse. It follows the rules, blends in, and avoids standing out. Now meet Magenta. Magenta and her sister jewel tones are rich, dynamic, loud, sometimes garish, and not easily overlooked. Magenta doesn't always mix well with others. Magenta, however, is hard to ignore. And so I feel strongly about that, because I think beige is endorsed by or even encouraged by our society. And, our governing bodies want their citizens in beige. And too many screaming magentas, and there's trouble in River City. Or so we're told. And we've been told that for a long time, as we are. I'm also in my 60s, although I am turning 70 this year, which is kind of shocking to me. So I just think some rebellion is warranted at this point in our lives. And I think the biggest danger intrinsic to being all this beige is that it precludes creative thinking. And creativity and creative thinking is really at the heart of my blog and my book, because I think, when we're armed with just a beige paintbrush, we beige up our goals and it's not just our sofas and our purses, it's our life choices. And so I use color a lot in this book, mainly as a metaphor for accessing some hard issues that women our age and, really every woman faces. And so, so I've kind of anthropomorphized these two colors, beige and magenta, and kind of set them up in this life contest. And beige and magenta kind of taunts the beige and says, come on, you can break a few rules. You can step outside the lines. You can color outside the lines. Just because your kindergarten teacher taught you to do that when you were growing up, it's okay now. And so while it might look like the book and there's a lot of color and all this kind of stuff, and I reference it, but the message behind all this is really quite serious. Anyway, so that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I love that part where you did the paragraph that you read out. That resonated with me because it's such a good metaphor, the beige versus the magenta, which are just two opposite ends of the scale. And I think the other thing, as you were talking yesterday, I was minding my grandchildren, and one of them is suddenly become obsessed with soccer. I think it was because of the World Cup, and we call it soccer, but I think it's football, whatever. Anyway, so he says, come on, let's have a game. So I do that. And he has been sort of, how the players really celebrate when they do something good and that sort of thing. And he's mimicking that. And I'm just sort of thinking about how, it's easy for us to say, oh, don't do that. You look like you're showing off, or you look like in this, but he is genuinely just enjoying himself and being out there. And I just think it's a shame that we do start to say that to the children, because that's where our problems start, really, way back when we've been told all these stories about, as you say, following the rules. Don't do this, don't do that. You don't want to be seen to be like that. You don't want to be a troublemaker. And I think that we carry those stories right through our lives. And it really does stunt our creativity and growth. And I'd read your book, and I was thinking about that with my grandson yesterday, and thinking you've got to find the fine line between saying, well, teaching them how to behave, for society, but letting them be themselves as well. And that's how we have to rediscover who we are now, after living within that tight framework all our lives.
And that is a lovely, lovely example. I'm kind of bowled over. I wish I included something like that in my book, because I think that is absolutely true. And, and this book is definitely geared towards women, but I love the story about your grandson. But, like you just described, breaking rules is different from breaking laws.
Yes.
And I think women have lived their lives, or a good portion of it, within the confines of one authority or another, whether it's dad or professors or bosses. And we learned a whole lot of rules. And those rules have made us beige, and they have that capability of inhibiting us. Just like you said, the joy, the way you described your grandson, the jumping up and down and the joyfulness, that joyfulness is what, we should finally, at least if not now, when, bring back into our lives. And so you have just encapsulated the message of this book very, very well. And I think breaking some fine print rules is okay. And then at least over here, the 60s were, boomers were, I call women of my age cohort lady boomers. And we were products, even though we're in our 60s, we were products of the 1960s. And, the flower power was one of the and psychedelic colors were in vogue back then. And I think we should, recall those back up and have a little rebellion at this point in our life, because ageism is real. I listened to one of your podcasts last fall, and a woman was talking about ageism. I don't recall her name, but it's real. I mean, just look at how we're depicted on the internet with buns and canes.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's exactly right. And that really annoys me in a way, because I was just seeing, how you're scrolling through your social media and these ads will pop up, and there's and like I recently in my 60s gained my certification for group training and personal training in fitness. And what I am finding is that our women over 50 or 60 are being depicted as these older, I don't know, but it's just not us, it's like our grandmother's age and day. And, I sort of think to myself, well, hey, hang on, I'm not like that. And I know that my friends aren't like that, but they seem to be caught in this depiction of what a woman over 60 should look like. And it's certainly not how we are, and I think that it's really annoying to me that we're put in that category of, well, this is how you should look because you're over 60. And so I agree with you that we've really got to try and fight against that. And the more that we talk about it, the more that we get that message out there, maybe people will start listening. But I wanted to talk to you about, because your book, you're very creative, and a lot of women, and I've said it myself, oh, I'm not creative. But then I look and think, well, I have a podcast and I write a blog, and there's all different ways, ways to be creative. So I've learnt that. But you say that creativity is crucial for the aging process. So I'd like to just touch on that if we could.
Okay. A big part of my book is focused on exercising your creativity. And I'm very intentional about that label, because I think it's the third leg of fitness. We have no trouble understanding that we need to exercise our bodies. I mean, that is, doctors say that, all kinds of studies say that, and we get our steps in, we join fitness centers, and we recognize that. And the same thing with our minds. Learning a new language or the ukulele or something very important. But somehow after we get past the age of 10, we stop paying less attention to our creative muscles. And I really believe that just like our physical muscles, if they're not engaged, they atrophy, and so can our creative muscles. And it's really about creative thinking more than just creativity. Because I've had people kind of roll their eyes when I start, because I sound like a creativity evangelist. I'm so persuaded by the life-changing capacity of it, because it's good for your health, it's good for your brain, it's good for your body, and I think it's a great co-conspirator in this aging thing that we're going through. And it's not just me saying this. I look for studies that whether to validate this, and engaging in any sort of visual expression exercises results in the reward pathway in the brain being activated. You feel good. Arts engagement enable us to focus deeply, planting us squarely in the minute, which is, getting in the flow. You've heard those expressions before, but they're real, and it increases the wave activity in the front and central regions of the brain. And engaging in creative activities, it promotes openness and thinking, such as yes, I had a knee replacement, but and I can still swim laps. I mean, so
Yeah.
I mean, it's that yes and thinking that is really important, and that's create, it's all done with creativity. But it's not, what happens is people think, okay, well then I'll just go do something. Well, it's not, creativity isn't like snapping your fingers and summoning it. It's, you've got to exercise it. And so that I actually run a workshop called Exercise Your Creativity, and with about 30 women at actually at a really cool fitness center in Winter Park, Florida. And these women come in and we have all the supplies. We have clay and paints and watercolors and all this. And so for a couple of hours, we help women exercise their creative muscles, and then, give them kind of homework to do, just so they can. And once you start on that path, you start noticing that you start thinking differently about, cooking dinner, or combining different clothes in your closet. I mean, just little baby steps that enrich and nourish your life. So I know I sound like I'm prioritizing this creativity crusade I'm on, but I see it. I've seen it in my own life, and I see it in these women. Well, and the other thing that, I'm sorry,
go on.
I'll get off my soapbox. The other thing I've noticed among when I have these tables of women sitting, and a couple men, they start, these social connections are critical as you age. And so I see relationships forming. I mean, two of my students became movie buddies, and they go to independent films together now. And that's wonderful, because, people think sometimes, I mean, I know my parents said, okay, I'm retired, I'm going to sit on the sofa, maybe play golf, but I don't think we should sit on the sofa. I think we're a generation where we want to find meaning in the second half of our life. So I'm off.
No, I was just going to say about the creativity that we do hold ourselves back because we're not open to what creativity is. I mean, if you say creativity, a lot of people will go, oh, well, I can't draw, or I can't do artwork, because people will automatically associate creativity with art. And it could be anything. And, as I look back now, I used to say, in fact, the reason I thought I was not creative was that someone said to me once, well, I'm creative and you're not. And that's what she said to me. She was creative, but I wasn't. And so that, you stick with the negatives. You only ever hear the negative side of things, don't you? You don't think about the positive stuff. And so for years I thought that way. But when I look back on my life, I started life as a ballet teacher, a dance teacher. So I would do choreography. And, the kids that have a big recital at the end of the year. That's being creative. It's as I said, writing the blog, it's doing the podcast, it's coming up with routines for a group fitness class, things like that. Now, for me, I don't think I can draw very well. So I would like to learn. And my little youngest grandson's trying to teach me. We have a little art hub together. But in your book, you talk about doodling. Just start doodling. And I thought about that, and that's creative as well. And as you said, the clothes, let's mix and match our colors, or whatever. It's not just about drawing. Everybody has some form of creativity.
Oh, you and I are kindred spirits, sister. You're absolutely right. I mean,
well, it's taken me it took me a long while to learn that, but
so many people have been saddled with "you're not creative" labels, and labels are just, I'm more and more convinced they're just deadly. I mean, when my son was, I think in the 9th or 10th grade, he took an art class, and he was so proud because they had to draw their hands, and he was kind of proud when he brought it back into school, and the teacher was so critical. He transferred out of the class and took some technicals, and I was crushed by that, because I mean, in our little group of women, at the fitness center, we really work to applaud each other. It doesn't matter what you put down there. It just doesn't. And we just, and ours is visually oriented, but you're right. It can be cooking. It can be gardening. It could be anything like that. And if you start doing that, you really will think, I'm tired of this meatloaf recipe. I think I'm going to look in Cooking Light and find something else. And that's more interesting. It's more interesting to try something new than just the same old thing. It's boring, and I think creativity relieves boredom at the very least.
It does. And also there's a sense of satisfaction in what you've produced. Like just recently, I've reintroduced what I call my home restaurant date night. You get into a rut, you just make the same thing all the time. And for quite a while, we used to make Saturday night our dinners where I would make something nice, or my husband would, that sort of thing. So we hadn't done it for a while, and I said, okay, this year, that's one of the things I'm doing. And it's really good because it makes me look at different recipes that I might not have made before. Then I make it, might take me all afternoon, but that's okay. I'm enjoying myself. Then I create this beautiful meal and I take a photo of it, and I think, wow, that didn't really take all that long, but it just gives you a sense of satisfaction. It's relaxing, like I'm in the kitchen just cooking away, relaxing, or I suppose in your classes, women are producing some form of visual art. That is relaxing because it takes you into the moment. It takes you out of life. So,
that's right.
I'm a big one for creativity. So let's just, how would you, what's a couple of tips on igniting creativity? I think we've probably covered it, but what if someone says to you, look, I'm just not creative at all? Where do I start?
Well, I love the word tips. Somehow as I was writing, I ended up sprinkling in throughout the book tips. And they're kind of like adages. Be brave, lose the beige is a mouthful, so I called them the BBLB Manual of Maxims. I love a good alliteration. And so I have about 35 kind of tips, and they're in context with the chapters, of course. But I'm happy to share a couple of those with you. And they are kind of designed. And by Sass, I'm not just talking about wearing a flouncy dress or something. That's great too, if you want to do that. But it really is an attitude. Sass is an attitude. And so let me look at a couple of these here. Number 19 is try wasting a day. We ponder a blade of, the tree outside your house and just, because we don't do enough of that, living in the moment kind of thing. Another one is, yes, all right, I hope I can say this. Yes, your children's shit really does stink. Because I have a whole parenting chapter.
Yes, I've read that.
And we have enabled our children quite a bit. And that has made us lose our color because, as I was writing my book, anytime a FaceTime or call came in from one of my children or grandchildren, I dropped everything. I mean, even if I'm in a doctor's office, I scoot out to take that call. And I love that. I cherish that. But it also kind of takes away from our own empowerment too, because we are very quick to stop doing anything that is just for ourselves. We have a phobia about doing things just for ourselves. I'm a numbers junkie. My husband and I have a survey research business, and so I've done a lot of polls of baby boomer women on these kind of topics, and just the acute sense of responsibility we feel is a part of why we've turned a little beige.
Mm, mm. Yes, I can identify with that, everything you've said there. And I think most mothers do. And it's just something, you're a mother for life. And
Yeah.
it's very, very hard to not feel guilty if you want to do things for yourself. But there's got to come a time when you finally say, hey, this time is for me, because we only get one opportunity. So you don't want to get to the end of your life and think, well, gosh, I wish I'd done this and I wish I'd done that. So, you've got to really, you're right about the children. We do enable them too much, and we need to teach them to stand on their own 2 feet. Mind you, I think the next generation are doing that. My daughter's very much about, her son's going to be changing schools next year, and he's turning 9 this week. And she said, we've got to start preparing him for that, because he's got to start taking responsibilities and do this and that. And I
Wow.
thought, well, she works in a very high intense job. And so she's trying to teach them as much as she loves them. And she would want to do things for them to make it easier. She's trying to teach them now that, life's not all about having everything done for you. You need to step up
Right.
yourself. So maybe
Wow.
the next generation are learning. Now, we talk about society and the way they view women, older women. How can we stay, as you call it, loud and proud as we age, rather than becoming more invisible, becoming more beige, losing our color in the way we dress, but also in our personality? How can we get back to being that loud and proud of who we are?
I think part of it is um, owning more of ourselves, and you can't really own yourself if you're not paying attention to what you need and what your passions are. And I know that, and that's creative thinking. um I I'm turning 70, and I have friends who retired. And I mean, I love streaming on Netflix and Prime and all those, but they do an inordinate amount of that. And I'm kind of proud that I wrote a book. And like you're not giving up. I just think we can't give up. And we have this gift of time right now because our kids aren't living with us any longer. And now we often are 911 on our kids' cell phones, still our adult children's cell phones, and we're often the caregivers for 3 different generations, sometimes simultaneously. So that's kind of a robbing. And so we have, I think it's called boundaries, Sue. As much as
Yeah.
I am not good at it, I think establishing some boundaries and paying attention. I'm a big journal writer, and sometimes you don't know what you think until you write it down, as Joan Didion said, the author. And I can be struggling with something, and if I start, working it out on my computer or iPad or paper, it reveals what I need. And
Mm.
it's okay. I mean, our mothers, you know, had their dreams thwarted many times because they had much more traditional lives. And so they kind of imposed some of their dreams on their daughters, as well as saying, but you better have kids. And so we're caught in this tweener thing. We were kind of a tweener generation, sandwiched between, our mother's wishes and and really wanting to be, good parents, but also working and establishing a life. And so I think the upshot was we had a lot of guilt.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that guilt can really zap your color. So kind of working through some of that, I think it would be very helpful in getting our sass back.
Yes. Yeah. And sort of, I think we need to have the courage to be able to stay to those closest to us, and that we are an individual as well. So what you want for yourself, think that, perhaps we might want that for ourselves. And
Yes, yes,
why is
yes.
it that you can have that, but you think, oh no, well, they probably don't think we can't have it, but they don't acknowledge that perhaps, we're an individual, we're just mum or nan or grandma or whatever, and
Yes, yes,
we're not really an individual anymore, or a personality. We're
yes.
just that
And they
person.
don't want us to be. They want us to still be their mom. I mean, my 40-year-old son, my son, youngest turned 40 this year. And I know he really wants me to be able to, he has somebody in his corner who will listen and hang on to every word he says as he processes through his life. His wife will tell him, like, I don't have time for this. I'm I'm making school lunches and I'm running a she's a psychologist too. And but their moms right there.
Yeah, yeah. So, as I said, I've been reading your book, and I will be putting all the links in the show notes to
Thank
your
you.
blogs, and I'd encourage the women. Actually, is your book published yet? I'm not sure because you did send me a copy. So,
I think they sent you an advanced reader copy. It's
okay, yeah.
actually coming out on May 16th.
Oh, that's not too far away. Yes, but I love the fact that you are using stories from your life. I love the one about where you and your husband finally got to go on a holiday, and then, I won't give too much away, but that was one where you broke the rules just a little bit, but you
A
got what you
little bit.
wanted in
I
the
mean,
end.
that's it. So it's not that we break laws, but you can just say, just little baby steps, little
Yeah.
fine print rules. I mean, he was in the, all right, here I'll close this out with this. I know this is such a little thing. It is such a little thing, but when I go out to a restaurant, I tend in the evening, say, I tend to order 3 drinks. I'll have a glass of water, I'll get a glass of wine, I might have a glass of iced tea. And I think I'm the only one noticing this, but apparently over the years, my family and my friends have noticed this. And so my stepson said, I think it's the perfect trilogy. You've got carbonation, hydration, and intoxication. And he said, I think it's great. I recommend it's like, so I thought I was invisible with this tiny little, no big deal thing, but it worked for me. It was a little unconventional, just a little bit, but not hugely so. But it actually kind of has inspired friends and my family. My daughter-in-law said, I didn't even know you could order 3 drinks. That's like it's so just something that tiny is empowering.
Yes. And also the fact that, most of us wouldn't think about doing that because we go, oh, well, that's not the societal norm. We usually we might have a glass of water there, but, and have a wine or something, but you wouldn't think about ordering 3 drinks every time. So the other thing we need to know is that whatever we do, we can be a role model to the
Oh,
next
good point.
generations.
Good point. Good point. Yes.
So, I mean, they might see, oh, I thought you weren't allowed to do this or you weren't allowed to do that, but I see her doing that and she's going for it. So I want to do that as well. So that's, I think we need to realize that we can be more inspiring to others and we don't even know that we are.
Well, you
So,
just did that with your grandson when you said, yes, be joyful, to be, rock it with soccer. I mean, and I think that's a really great role for a grandparent to say, yeah, your parents, the rules the parents set up, oh, well, we'll skirt those just a little bit. We don't want to get in trouble with the parents, but just a little bit. And I think that's good for kids.
yeah, I think so too. We're not stunting their creativity or their joy, as we have to reprimand them when they're not doing the right thing. They have to learn that there's right and wrong. But I think that you don't have to stamp out their enthusiasm in life as we go along because
Right.
the world does that anyway.
That's right. They don't need us to.
Yeah. So look, we're coming to the end of our conversation now, and I could chat to you. I could keep chatting
Oh, me
forever,
too.
but
You're,
I just
you're
wondered.
delightful.
I just wondered if there was any other tips. I do have another question I'm going to ask you, but is there anything else that you'd like to share with the listeners? Any advice or an anecdote or anything that you think we haven't covered?
Well, well, you kind of mentioned it, and I keep harping on creativity, but at the end of each chapter of my book, I have an exercise, your creativity exercise. And you had mentioned one is doodle for your noodle, and another is 6-word stories. Write a
Yeah.
6 story about your life. And that, thank you, Ernest Hemingway, who started that flash fiction. But it's so clever. I mean, it just really actually contorts your brain to kind of come up with 6 words to convey a story. And so I think, so I encourage some kind of exercise. And the other thing I might add is we are at the point in our life where we're not having to be, have our ego out the wazoo and be climbing in our work and all that kind of stuff, and just focused on raising children and all that kind of stuff any longer. So I think, especially for this generation, finding meaning in the second half of life is really important. I follow a theologian whose name is Richard Rohr, Rohr, and he talks a lot about the second half of life. And I that's kind of what I hoped with my book, is that helping women focus on this second half of life and knowing it's not over. Redefine aging, redefine, what living means to you. And because we're going to be facing health issues and financial issues. Do we have enough retirement, to carry us through 90 or 100? A lot of us are going to live to 100. And so we have a lot more living to do.
We certainly do. So that brings me to my last question, which I ask all of my guests. It's the same question I ask, and it's surprising. I don't think I've had well over 100 interviews, and I don't think I've had the same answer twice. So that's really good.
Oh, now I'm nervous.
No pressure. So it's pretty basic. It's, what does being a woman living well after 50 mean to you?
I think we've kind of talked about that a little bit. It's about, to me, it's about a lack of ego, that I don't have. Well, I'll tell you, I have become a part of a 3-person group. There's only 3 of us, including myself. And all 3 of us, and we're all, well into our 60s, have a little bit of a dream. And we're all, and we went out for wine maybe 3 months ago. And one person said, well, I really love calligraphy. And she's a high-powered marketing person. And she said, I just love calligraphy and I'd like to do something with it. And another woman understands philanthropy and wants to help nonprofits. And then I had my book. And we were so hesitant about venturing this into the conversation. But what we realized at the end of the evening is we want to help each other. We want to lift each other up. And we're not competing with each other like maybe we did when we were younger. And that lack of ego and lack of competition, is my kid is athletic, is my son as athletic as yours? I mean, we don't have to do that anymore. So we can lift each other up. And that's what living well after 50, I think, means to me.
Yeah, it's great. And the way we do, we do have that support. We have our cheerleaders around us and helping us to achieve. I must say, and I will have to let you go soon, but you have what's called a K quiz on, because you've got 2 blogs. So I did that. I only did it quickly, but I came out as a dreamer.
Me
And I
too.
thought,
Of course you
And I
did.
thought, now people would, now I'm a very goal driven person. If I
I
set a
too.
goal, I'll do it, but I'm always, I don't think there's anything wrong with having dreams. And as long as you can try and make the dreams come to reality.
Yes.
Because so I thought, well, yeah, that's me. Because people would probably go, oh, what, it's not very good being a dreamer because you don't do anything. But I don't agree with that. I think that
I
you
don't
can
either.
have your dreams and then be the sort of person that says, okay, I'm going to set that and turn that dream into a goal and I'm going to work towards it and make it happen. And I think too many of us go, oh, I wish I could do that, instead of saying, well, why can't I do that?
Yes. Wonderful. Yeah, the K quiz. I mean, because my husband and I are in the market research business, we just on a lark developed this quiz, and it's been really fun. It's on
Yeah,
us called What's Next Boomer. And because I think there's a next for all of us.
yeah.
And so any way we can help each other find out what's next, let's do it.
Yeah. Well, that's a great note to finish on. So thank you so much, Liz, for being
Oh,
my guest today.
thank
It's been
you.
such a pleasure,
It's been a
such a
delight.
pleasure chatting. Yeah. And I know that my listeners will really enjoy the episode. And yeah, it's just been great to have you as my guest
Thank
today.
you for inviting me. I'm honored to have been on your show. Bye bye.
Well, what a fun interview that was with Liz Kitchens, author of Be Brave, Lose the Beige. And, it was really good. I love her analogy about whether you're being a beige, if you're caught in beige, or whether you should be turning and trying to be a magenta and more of the jewel tones in life. Lots of good maxims and tips in her book. So I really recommend that you look out for that in the next month or so, and trying to think about the ways that you are creative yourself, because we all are. So that's it for this episode. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope that you've enjoyed the content today and that you will leave me with a like or a comment. Always love to hear what you're saying and feeling. And please share it with a friend who I know will benefit from the conversation. So that's it for another episode. I'll see you next time. And remember, in the meantime, to live well, enjoy life, and most of all, be a woman living life your way. Bye for now.